One of the most key elements of the Star Wars universe is hyperspace. Whether the era is of the Republic, the Empire, the Galactic Alliance, this is the way that everybody gets around. It is a cornerstone of galactic society. In fact, the invention of hyperspeed traversal was the very reason the Galactic Republic formed in the first place all the way back in the year 25,000 BBY. Any civilization that spans an entire galaxy is going to require an efficient method of travel. Using a hyperdrive, ships can essentially jump into an alternate dimension, traveling hundreds or even thousands of times the speed of light to make a trip from one point in space to another, within an efficient amount of time, of course. In that many thousands of years that it's been around, this amazing feat of ingenuity has become a routine to the point of mundane life in Star Wars, and yet, it is still something that is taken insanely seriously. Flying through hyperspace is not the same as flying a ship in space, and if one is not careful, there are absolute horrors waiting in hyperspace that can outfly anybody. Welcome again, my friends, to another Dark Holocron, and today we'll be breaking down the nightmares of hyperspace. Before we really get into what makes faster than light travel so dangerous, we should first establish how it actually works. Explaining the functions of hyperdrives and how they access hyperspace should be a holocron all on its own, so we'll keep the information and explanation here brief. Hyperspace technology allowed sentients to bypass a barrier of light-speed movement, something that is typically impossible for physical matter to achieve. This is done by making use of a transphysical effect to create ripples in space-time. A hyperdrive-equipped ship would propel off these ripples in order to jump into hyperspace, allowing it to traverse the galaxy at speeds of hundreds or even thousands of times faster than the speed of light. In hyperspace, the normal laws of space and time did not apply, and beings traveling through hyperspace sometimes use stasis fields to slow the passage of time while on board their vessels in order to have the pilot only age as fast as the rest of the galaxy would. This was included in the duties of what life support systems did on starships. Even galactic scientists don't fully understand the nature of hyperspace though, which is part of what makes it so terrifying. In its simplest terms though, it was a dimension of space-time which existed coterminously with real space. What this means is that each point in real space was associated with a unique point in hyperspace. Additionally, every object in real space, such as stars, planets, and asteroids, had a counterpart in hyperspace which was referred to as a mass shadow. And this is where our first aspect of the terror begins. Mass shadows were essentially the gravity signature of a real space object being cast into the dimension of hyperspace. The danger comes in when a ship comes into contact with or gets too close to one of these mass shadows. The gravity well created by celestial bodies had the ability to rip vessels right out of hyperspace. In fact, this would spell immediate doom to a ship, especially one that was not prepared for this to happen. When plotting a course through hyperspace, it typically required extremely precise calculations to find a route that avoided the edges of these mass shadows. During times of war though, it wasn't unheard of for militaries to manipulate mass shadows against their enemies. They would achieve this by using gravity generators, using them to create an artificial indirection field which stopped hyperspace travel in a particular area, doing so by mimicking the outer fringes of a celestial body's gravity, useful for both pulling ships out of hyperspace en route and preventing enemies from escaping through light speed during an engagement. But with mass shadows, we have to talk about Malachor 5 and the mass shadow generator. This created an artificial mass shadow that ripped the fleets of both the Republic and the Mandalorians out of the atmosphere with such force that they devastated the entire world, resulting in Malachor becoming a gravitational anomaly. Oftentimes, using a planet's mass as a backstop, a hyperdrive safety systems automatically stopped the ship as it reached the farthest point of possible travel. However, sometimes accidents did happen. Hyperspace collisions could devastate or even destroy an entire world, considering the fact that the output of the reactors of many capital ships were on par with that of a star. With this, one could unleash a great deal of destructive power on a selected target. In the lore, this is true even if a planet had its planetary shielding up at the time of a hyperspace collision occurring. It could still have the potential to kill millions on a world such as Coruscant due to the fallout damage alone. The reason we know this is it actually happened once in Legends continuity during the Clone Wars. A battlecruiser's hyperdrive was damaged by a torpedo droid during battle, which caused an interdimensional hyperjump to occur. The cruiser would then crash land full speed into the separatist world of Paman, fracturing the entire planet to its core, polluting the world's atmosphere with radiation. Although later the Republic vehemently denied any proposed wrongdoing in this tragedy, the Confederacy used this event as propaganda for fear-mongering against the separatist worlds. With that said though, all in all, using hyperspace as a weapon against an enemy is not something that was commonly used in warfare simply because of how dangerous it was to master. Not even the Sith treated hyperspace so lightly, because of how little everyone knew about it. The consequences of treating this realm flippantly could be disastrous. However, Darth Sidious would decide to take a crack at it with one of the worst superweapons in all of history. Because if any Sith were gonna try, it was gonna be Sidious. The weapon we're talking about was called the Galaxy Gun. The titanic weapon remained stationary over the deep core world of Biss, and would fire hyperspace torpedoes. As the name suggested, each of these projectiles had their own hyperdrive attached, allowing Palpatine the power of the Death Star at any point in the galaxy he so chose, without having to leave the comfort of his chosen world. He could literally do it from his living room if he wanted to. But getting back to the actual hyperspace travel lore, it's finally time to talk about hyperlanes. Hyperlanes were essentially routes through space in which a spaceship could travel safely uninterrupted without colliding with a body in space, or some other phenomenon such as a black hole occurring. They are essentially tunnels through hyperspace connecting the galaxy like veins. When one uses a hyperlane, they don't need to make the extremely precise calculations usually required for such a jump, as you would simply connect yourself to the hyperlane, and as long as that lane had an opening, your ship would simply coast down until you needed to get off of it. But the trick about hyperlanes is their stability is often directly supported by how frequently one is used. The 5 main hyperlanes that connect the galaxy are self-sufficient, while lesser known hyperlanes have to be charted and then used frequently in order to ensure that they remain stable. However, many untraveled hyperlanes, especially those that go to the deep core, are unstable. They can open and close at any interval, allowing access to or cutting off certain areas of space unannounced. And may the Force help you if you're traveling down an unknown hyperlane and then it decides to close. Something really scary is it's not currently known exactly what happens to those that get caught up in a closing hyperlane. Some theorize that the vessel is obliterated instantly, atomizing the ship and all those on board. Others say that the vessel is trapped in hyperspace for all eternity now. But the most likely result is getting stuck in what is known as a crossroad, a halfway into hyperspace, and a half in real space. Considering hyperspace itself as a dimension of space-time, being caught in the crossroads means that things are getting weird. And in Legends, this is how accidental time travel was achieved by an ancient Sith Lord. In 5000 BBY, during the Great Hyperspace War initiated by Naga Sadow, a Jedi turned Sith by the name of Rogan had accidentally demolished a moon while mining for a specific Force-sensitive ore by the name of a lignin. The strange ore would actually empower those connected to the dark side, and Rogan had recently joined the Sith Order and was looking to increase his status in the eyes of his new brethren. To that end, he was delivering a large crop of the ore in order to help turn the tide of the ongoing battle. However, 2 Jedi had orders to stop the shipment at all costs. One of them, his former master, by the name of Drur, and his new Jedi Padawan managed to board his ship, known as the Harbinger, and the Jedi sabotaged the hyperdrive. In the process of them doing this though, his former Jedi student, now Sith Lord, found himself and the Jedi engaged in a duel right there in the engine room. The Sith managed to lop off his former master's arm, but the damage had been done to the Harbinger's hyperdrive, causing what is known as a misjump. The Padawan was instantly vaporized as the Harbinger was caught in the crossroads of hyperspace and real space. Quickly, the Jedi ran to his escape pod, which successfully launched, but the Sith Lord was left on board, utilizing the power of the ore to eventually yank the ship successfully out of hyperspace, with the Jedi Master and the Sith Lord both miraculously surviving. But not all is the same. When they return to the galaxy, 5,000 years have passed, and they are now in the era of Luke Skywalker and the Jedi Praxium. As the story goes on, the Jedi Master enlists the help of Luke Skywalker's Jedi Order, mainly Jade and Core, who had a vision concerning this singular event. The Jedi would put a stop to this new Sith Lord, but at the cost of the old Jedi falling to the dark side and using the power of the Ore to battle his former Padawan. In the end, the Jedi sacrifices himself to crash the Harbinger into a planet so that he, his Sith apprentice, and the Ore would all be destroyed, since they did not belong in this period of time, and were a part of old, dark side magic. With that dramatic example of things going horrifically wrong, it can be difficult to imagine that there is still yet one more issue with traveling through hyperspace. And this one is potentially the most dangerous, since it happens more often and can affect those traveling through hyperspace while they're still inside of their ship. Legend has it that staring at hyperspace from the observation deck for a very long time can prove to be dangerous to an individual. Hyperrapture was the name of psychosis produced by staring too long at the swirling, kaleidoscope patterns of light which made up the hyperlane tunnels. There was something fundamentally wrong with a mortal being viewing the hyperdimensional universe, and because of this, it became imperial procedure to keep all transparisteel opaque during hyperspace travel. But this wouldn't stop some from watching the enchanting light display. Lord Vader, for instance, enjoyed staring at it while he was traveling, allowing his mind to get lost in a meditative trance. Unfortunately, hyperrapture is something more so just referenced as a legend, and not something with documented cases in the lore, so we don't actually know what happens when someone succumbs to the so-called hyperspace madness. But that doesn't stop it from being an absolutely terrifying prospect of reality. And so, my friends, with all of this lore, would you still be willing to traverse hyperspace knowing all of the dangers? The chances of any of these things happening are very low, of course, and each has a unique circumstance that was attached to it, and yet, the chances are still never zero. If you learned something today about the horrors of hyperspace, be sure to drop a comment and a like down below. And if you're eager to hear more of the terrors of a galaxy far, far away, reach out, subscribe, and stay tuned for more of our dark holocron readings. And until next time, my friends, may the Force be with you.